DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And good evening. We are back. This evening for UFC 328. So we have some appetizers for you this evening. Some appetizers. And so this is UFC 328, Chimaev versus Strickland. So that's Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. And this event is coming up May 9th, 2026 at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, United States. And I think we're getting more used to the new start time, the new earlier start time. So this is 8 Central, 9 Eastern time, which I for an aging fellow like me, I prefer to get the prelims going early and standard prelims, and then get right into the main event a little bit earlier, so we don't end up having like real like big letdowns at like 1 in the morning due to like injuries or maybe the main event doesn't even happen due to maybe like missing weight or anything like that. But so this is a UFC 328. Looking at it from kind of a distance. Looks like a really good card. One of the main reasons is that there's actually some actual titles being defended on this card, and not just one, but 2 of them. So this is the first time in I think 2 or 3 numbered cards that an actual title is going to be defended, because they had some belts defended on some of the previous numbered cards, but they were either interim belts or even like the kind of like tour, like I don't know what you want to call it, the BMF belt. That's kind of just like I guess kind of fill in, like that's exactly what it's perfect for. If you don't have any other championship belts ready, you can just have someone defend the BMF title, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cartoonish to me, honestly. But yeah, to actually have some actual belts being defended and actual champions defending those belts, not a vacant belt, not an interim belt, not the BMF belt, that alone makes this card really nice. And then obviously it's the main card, you know, the bad blood. Whether how much of it's real, not really sure, but hey, it's good for the content and good for brings views and eyes to the product in Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland. But before we get too far into the main card, let's just kind of go over the early prelims and the standard prelims, which I think are pretty good. You got some very notable names on the card, so you know it's I would say it's close to being just as good as most of your standard fight nights. So you got a fight night quality of some prelims, and then you're on to the main card. But let's just go off some of these names that might be kind of name recognition, might be familiar fighters just off the name. So early prelims card. So I guess kind of like the co-main event of the early prelims, you have a featherweight bout between Pat Sabatini versus William Gomez. And then for the main event for the early prelims, you have a middleweight bout between Roman Kopylov versus Marco Tullio. So yeah, you know, we've heard of most. I would imagine most UFC fans have heard of Roman Kopylov and Pat Sabatini. So not nice to get into the early prelims and already have some notable fighters on the card. And then the standard prelims, pretty much every card has some kind of familiarity, name recognition on the card. But the first fight on the early prelims is a lightweight bout between Jim Miller versus Jared Gordon. And then the second fight is a lightweight bout between Grant Dawson versus Mateus Rebecki. And then co-main event of the early prelims, you have a welterweight bout between uh, Joel Alvarez versus Yaroslav Amzov. And then the main event for the middleweight bout, which I could see this being like a headliner for a a fight night because of how like a just kind of a crazy athlete and just kind of just been running through people until like his last fight I think might have went to decision, but let's see here. Yeah, before his last fight, he pretty much was knocking out like pretty much everyone he's fight. But it's a middleweight bout between Ataba Gutierrez versus Ozzy Diaz. So that should be an interesting fight. Got Gutierrez, just a physical freak, and who knows with the really impressive finish over Ozzy Diaz, who is a step up in competition for him. Maybe he's maybe just one or two more fights or one more impressive victory away from maybe being next for Khamzat Chimaev or Sean Strickland, whoever wins that belt or whoever wins it or whoever defends it tonight. So yeah, that's a pretty nice fight card there. And just let's see, I swear when I first looked at this card, I thought it was Jim Miller that was fighting King Green, and so I keep getting it mixed up into that Jeremy Stevens. He missed weight by 4 pounds, but that's the first fight on the main card against King Green. But yeah, I guess losing 30% of your purse, but they're still allowing him to fight. And hey, I'm glad King Green still willing to fight him. So that's the prelims, and that's the confusion. I was about to say that Jim Miller missed weight, but now it's Jeremy Stevens. Get these guys that are all fought around the same time, the same generation of fighters. These guys that are 40 or at least pushing 40, get them mixed up, even though they're different fighters and all had different and great careers. But anyway, so let's get to the main card here. So this is a UFC. Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland in UFC 328. So, and this is coming up on Saturday. So just tomorrow. So, anyways, so can I get a menu? And so the first fight on the card, we already kind of went over it a little bit. We have a lightweight bout between King Green versus Jeremy Stevens, which Jeremy Stevens, he must have had, I don't know if it's a age thing or maybe a slight injury thing, but he missed weight by 4 pounds. But King Green still agreed to fight him and losing the whole 30% of his purse and all that. So nice to still see him fight. Still see this fight, a very interesting fight, because everyone knows by now about King Green, how he has such a unorthodox style, and he just kind of keeps his hands down and is always talking trash the entire fight, and he's just looking for an opening, looking for someone else to over pursue him because he's got his hands down, thinking that they can get an easy shot on him and knock him out. Which majority of the time that's not usually how it happens. And so King Green, he was had a little bit of a bumpy road there for a while in his last 5 fights, but he's on it. He's in his last 2 fights, he's had some wins over split decision win over Lance Gibson Jr. and actually knocked out Daniel Zolhaber TKO punches, and that was February 28, 2026 at the 4:55 mark in the second round in Mexico City, Mexico, not New Mexico, but Mexico. But before that, it looked like maybe he was on his way out because he got choked to sleep by Patty Pimblin before that, and then he got KO'd on a crazy like spinning wheel kick by Mauricio Ruffy. But he's had a nice comeback since then, and those fights were not that long ago. The Mauricio Ruffy fight was March 8th, 2024, and then the getting choked to sleep triangle choke by Patty Pimblin was July 27, 2024. But but he is a 3-2. Yeah, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, and he's on currently on a 2-fight winning streak. And he's had 53 matches in his career. He's 39, so he checks out in being in that same kind of guys that are uh, close to 40 or are 40, have turned 40 already. But 53 fights with 34 wins, 17 losses, one draw, and one no contest. In those 34 wins, he has 12 wins by knockout, 9 wins by submission, and 13 wins by decision. And 17 in the 17 losses he's been knocked out 6 times, he's been submitted 3 times, and he's had eight losses by way of decision. So after you amass that many fights, of course you're gonna I would think would find a way, and just the large number of fights, you're gonna find a way to either win them in any type of way, and probably if you're going to lose some, which I mean with that many fights, unless you're like Floyd Mayweather or someone who's like 50-0, you're going to lose some fights. So he's found a way to lose them as well in any type of way, whether that's knockout, submission, or going to decision, and even has draws and no contest. So pretty much every way that you can win, lose, or draw, or no contest. I mean, I guess just the only thing that he doesn't have on there, I guess, is being disqualified, which is a positive, I assume. But he is fighting. So this is lightweight, 155. He is fighting Jeremy Stevens, who, I just, that's a kind of an annoyance, and probably a pet peeve of most mixed martial arts, either fighters or just fans, like fighters that miss weight. You're either looking at that as, man, they had a bad weight cut, or maybe they're not weren't healthy, had some type of injury, or or maybe they're just not taking it serious, which I could see that possibly being the case with these guys that are almost 40, 39 with Jeremy Stevens. So you can kind of see in the end of the line with some of these fighters. But Jeremy Stevens, I guess he just recently got back into the UFC after being out of the UFC since back at November 25th, 2022. And not really a surprise that he was out of the UFC, because he has not been great in his last, let's see, in his last 9 fights, he only has one win in his last 9 fights. So I don't really understand what he actually did to be able to get back into the UFC to begin with. And so one win, and then Yari Rodriguez was a accidental eye poke during that stretch there. But yeah, he's so he is. We're going just off the last 5 fights. He is 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and he lost. He came back May 3rd, 2025, and fought Mason Jones and lost the decision to him. So I mean, for the most part, yeah, I guess there's a little bit of everything with the way he's losing by decisions, and and even getting knocked out and submitted. But he also has 52 matches in his career with 29 wins and 22 losses. So he almost has as many wins, as many losses as he does wins. So that's why this is kind of a head scratcher for me. Is I think this is kind of being set up so we'll hopefully get like a crazy like knockout or some kind of just crazy brawl between Jeremy Stevens and King Green. That's what this feels like. Even though Jeremy Stevens hasn't been knocked out a ton, hasn't really been stopped a ton in general, either submission or being knocked out in his fight. Lost a lot by decision, but not he's not the easiest guy to finish. But I feel that's what this fight is for. You got two 39-year-olds towards the end of their career. Even though I'd say King Green currently has had more success, but Jeremy Stevens, 52 matches, 29 wins, 22 losses, and one no contest. In those 29 wins, he has 19 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, and 8 by decision. And then in his 22 losses, only been knocked out 3 times, and been submitted five times. So maybe it's more likely he might get submitted than knocked out in this fight, even though I feel like this is going to be some kind of crazy war. And then 14 losses by decision and the one no contest that we mentioned. So both of these guys are they're strikers, but that kind of different strikers, you know. I look at Jeremy Stephens as more of like a brawler and like a maybe a little more technical in regards to his striking and his boxing than King Green, who just like has his arms down at his waist, and he's talking trash, trying to bait you into something to knock you out. But anyway, so with the first fight on the main card, lightweight bout between King Green versus Jeremy Stephens. I'm going with King Green in this, just because it's just hard to pick Jeremy Stephens off of the what you see from his last 5 fights, his last 9 fights. It's kind of, like I said, it's kind of confusing at how he's even back in the UFC, other than kind of being served up to King Green to have some wild fight or crazy finish off of him. Even though, I mean, it's not like King Green's a young up and coming star where they're trying to feed someone to him. But in this lightweight bout between King Green versus Jeremy Stephens, I'm going King Green. I think he's going to knock Jeremy Stephens out. He's going to knock him out, and he's going to knock him out of the UFC on top of that. All right. So now then, on to the second fight on the card. We have a welterweight bout between Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley. And this you got a little bit more of contrasting styles here, where you got the great wrestling and the great ground game in Sean Brady, and then you have like the electric striking of Joaquin Buckley. So this should be like your classic grappler versus striker match. So Sean Brady, before he had his last loss between Michael Morales, some people were kind of looking at him maybe as maybe the next challenger for the belt. next in line for the shot at the welterweight welterweight championship, because he was on a 3-fight winning streak until his last loss to Michael Morales, where he got TKO'd punches, but he was beating guys like Kelvin Gastelum, submission Kimura, Gilbert Burns, decision, Leon Edwards, guillotine choke. So some impressive victories and just masterclass dominating guys on the ground and submitting them. But in his last 5 fights, he is 3-2. So probably was a bit of a big disappointment for him to have lost his last fight, because I feel if he'd have probably won that fight, he definitely would have been next in line for a title shot. Just depends on how long he wanted to wait for it, I assume. But he's had 20 fights in his career, with 18 wins and 2 losses. In the 18 wins, he's had 3 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission, and 9 wins by decision. And in those 2 losses, this kind of plays out and adds up like kind of perfectly to Joaquin Buckley, who's kind of like we said, he's an electric striker with crazy knockouts. So the only 2 losses that Sean Brady has is he's been knocked out twice. So that plays a little bit in the favor. If Joaquin Buckley is going to beat Sean Brady, that's probably how it's going to be, by knockout. And then Joaquin Buckley, everybody knows him for the crazy like spinning back kick while his opponent was like holding his foot up. Everybody kind of remembers that fight. And he was kind of in the same boat as Sean Brady in regards to he's on a long winning streak. He's beaten notable guys, and then just kind of hit a bump in the road in Kamaru Usman in his last fight, where he lost by decision. It was a fight of the night, so obviously it was a competitive fight, and it was a 5-round fight as well. But before he kind of, like we said, ran into that speed bump. He was on a 6-fight winning streak over Andre Vallejo, Alex Moreno, Benson Lequi, Nasrat Ruiz-Bolavov, Stephen Thompson, and Colby Covington. And that was a KO over Stephen Thompson and TKO over Colby Covington, guys that have either had, I think Colby Covington, when he had the interim belt, and Stephen Thompson has fought for the belt multiple times. So those were some impressive wins. And then just like Sean Brady, kind of a speed bump by Kamaru Usman beating him because probably an impressive victory there, or just a win over Kamaru Usman, another former champion, fighting three title contenders or champions in his last 3 fights. So impressive fight log, if nothing else, by Joaquin Buckley. But he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and 3 of those wins. The Benson Lequi was TKO punches. Stephen Thompson was a KO punch, and Colby Covington was TKO doctor stoppage. So impressive. He was on an impressive run there for a while, and he has 28 matches in his career with 21 wins and 7 losses. In the 21 wins, he has 15 wins by knockout and 6 wins by decision. And then in the 7 losses, which is a little surprising here, and kind of opposite to Sean Brady, how he's been knocked out, and the only 2 losses he's had, he's been knocked out. Kind of opposite here. Doesn't quite play in Sean Brady's favor quite as well, because he's in his 7 losses, he's been knocked out 4 times, but he's never been submitted. So that's probably more one of Sean Brady's strength. And then he's had 3 losses. His other 3 of his 7 losses were by decision. So, man, this is an intriguing bout and match, and because of the grappler versus striker versus grappler type of matchup. But so in this welterweight bout between Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley, I think I'm going with Sean Brady here, because before he kind of ran into that little speed bump we're talking about, I thought he was like on his way to being the next welterweight championship, and then it just didn't happen. And while over here you got Joaquin Buckley losing to a 40-year-old, like pretty much looking like he's retired Kamaru Usman. So I'm going with Sean Brady, and I think he's going to win. He's not going to get the knockout, and obviously Joaquin Buckley's a hard fighter to submit, but I think Sean Brady's going to be able to take him down and going to be able to hold him down and just control him consistently on the ground, and just beat him up a little bit with ground and pound. But I don't see him getting the stoppage. So I got so in this welterweight bout between Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley, I got Sean Brady winning this by decision. All right, now then, on to the third fight on the card. We have a heavyweight bout between Alexander Volkov versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. So this is where the card kind of starts getting spicy, at least in my opinion, because if you've been following the podcast and my content long enough, you've learned by now. I like the beef. I like the heavyweights. I like the potential for someone getting seriously hurt or getting their arm broken off. Like we like that. And these are two guys that can definitely dish that out, either with a knockout or just a sad, devastating type of submission that they could get a fighter in, and type of a hold. And so both of these fighters, I would say, are strikers, but they're both well-rounded, and most usually their clearest path to victory is usually by way of knockout. But Alexander Volkov, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and the one loss was to title contender Cyril Gane, which that was back December 7th, 2024, by split decision. So it's not like he got like smoked by the interim heavyweight champion in Cyril Gane or anything like that. Former interim heavyweight by Cyril Gane, and then in his most recent fight that he won was over kind of like what I think a lot of people were considering kind of like a an up and coming fighter, not necessarily because he was young, I guess. Well, no, I guess I'm mixing him up with someone else. But a fighter that had been, I think, was like dominating guys on the ground with submissions and ground and pound. And Jelton Almeida, he was able to beat him. I think he was the first guy to beat him in a while. Yeah, let's see. Well, I guess it wasn't. He was just on a 2-fight winning streak when Volkov beat him. But before that, two back, he lost to Curtis Blades, and then had won like double digit fights in a row. But I guess it turned out, I guess, that he's not as great as people thought. I think mainly because Jelton Almeida wasn't able to take Alexander Volkov down. But another fighter with 50 fights in his career, and he's not quite as close to being 40 or being 40 like some of those other fighters that we went over, but 37 years old in Alexander Volkov, and he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and he's had 50 fights in his career with 38 wins, 12 losses, and in the 38 wins, he's had 24 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, and 10 by decision. And in the 12 losses that he's had 2 losses by knockout, 3 losses by submission, and 7 by decision. So I would say probably if he's going to win this fight, probably be by knockout, and then he's pretty durable. But I believe Waldo Cortez Acosta, Salsa Boy, has been on quite a bit of a heater himself, and maybe with how shallow the heavyweight pool is, I could say just a win over Alexander Volkov, or even Alexander Volkov beating Waldo Acosta in an impressive fashion could lead to a title, a heavyweight title opportunity, I would think. But Waldo Acosta, I think we mentioned both of these guys, predominantly strikers and knockout artists. He is also 4-1 in his last 5 fights, but he is on a 3-fight winning streak over Ante Delija, Samil Gaziv, and Derek Lewis, knocking with 2 knockouts and then a TKO over Derek Lewis. So that's pretty impressive winning streak that he's on right now. Just it's 3 fights, but they're all knockouts. So winning these heavyweight bouts in impressive fashion, and he's only 34, so not quite as old as Alexander Volkov either. But he's had 19 fights with 17 wins and 2 losses. In his 17 wins, he's had 9 wins by knockout, 1 win by submission, and 7 wins by decision. And then in his 2 losses, shows that he's very durable because he's never been knocked out, never been submitted, and has only 2 losses by decision. So that's that's a hard thing to do in the heavyweight division. I mean, it just takes one clean shot, one unanticipated shot to be knocked out, or even just a glancing blow, depending on how good your chin is to get knocked out in the heavyweight division. And then just obviously shows that he must have a decent ground game or submission defense. So this is one of the first fights on the main card here that's kind of a little difficult to pick here. Feels kind of almost like a coin flip, and feels kind of hard picking against Alexander Volkov. But I think I'm going to go with Waldo Acosta. I think he's going to keep his knockout streak going and have a 4-fight winning streak, and like we said, might be next in line for a heavyweight title opportunity. So in the heavyweight bout between Alexander Volkov versus Wal Waldo Cortez Acosta. I'm going with Waldo Cortez Acosta to get the knockout over Alexander Volkov. But I could see, at the same time, I could see Alexander Volkov winning this as well. But it's hard, but just because it's never happened, it's a little hard to see Waldo Acosta getting knocked out or submitted if it's never happened before. All right. So now then, on to the co-main event and the first title being defended on this card. And so this is a flyweight bout champion for the flyweight champion. So Joshua Van, the champion, versus the challenger Tatsuro Taira. And so this is this kind of all has kind of like dots and things that are kind of connecting because Joshua Van was like the first Asian champion in the UFC, while Tatsuro Taira is trying to become the first Japanese champion in the UFC. So that's kind of just a little interesting kind of news and notes, and kind of a coincidence that they got them meeting up like that. So is Joshua Ban, you gonna hold back? I know they're not from the same Asian country, but you're gonna hold back another first timer in Tatsuro, the Japanese. But Joshua Van, kind of a interesting story just in regards to how he like attained the belt, but you can't really knock what he'd done to get that shot to begin with. But he was on a five a five fight winning streak before he fought for the belt against Alexander Pantoja, where he like he caught his leg and had Alexander Pantoja kind of off balance and like pushed him down. And I guess Alexander Pantoja, when he went to brace himself, he put his hands down and broke one of his arms. And that happened at the 26-second mark of the first 26-second mark of the first round. And that's how he won the belt. So he hasn't defended it yet. And he says when that injury of Alexander Pantoja is brought up, he says that he's the one that caused the injury. Like Alexander Pantoja got hurt because of him pushing him down essentially, and him not knowing how to fall correctly. So he definitely doesn't look at himself as some type of like paper champion or interim champion until he has a rematch with Alexander Pantoja. But I still kind of look at as the type of winning streak and how dominant Alexander Pantoja was looking in the flyweight division. Hard to really look at Joshua Van as like the true champion. But I mean, an impressive victory over Tatsuro Taira could definitely change my mind in regards to that. But he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, and he's had 18 fights in his career with 16 wins and 2 losses. In the 16 wins, he's had 8 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, and 6 wins by decision. And then in the 2 losses, he's been knocked out once and submitted once. And you have to go back to, before his 6-fight winning streak started, he got KO'd Charles Johnson, KO punches, and that was July 13th, 2024, at the 22nd mark of the 3rd round. But he's predominantly a striker, but has good submission defense, because that was like his 3rd fight of his career back like December 19th, 2021. Devin Jackson, Fury FC 55. So that seems kind of like a pretty common thing for like almost all fighters. You look at their fighting record and things early in their career, you can always kind of expect a fighter. Pretty common for them to have lost a fight by way of rear naked choke. But he is fighting Tatsuro Taira, like we mentioned, Japanese fighter wanting to become the first UFC Japanese champion. And he, I think, has a little bit more well-rounded of a fighting style, not just predominantly a striker, kind of like Joshua Van, but also has a great ground game and a great submission game, Tatsuro Taira. and he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and he's currently on a 2-fight winning streak with some impressive victories, a couple of impressive victories over Park Hanyu Sung, submission face crank, and then beating the former champion and former uh, title contender in Brandon Moreno with TKO punches. That was just back at UFC 323, December 6, 2025, and that was at the 224 mark of the second round. And then that one loss there, so he's on a 2-fight winning streak, but he did lose to Brendan Royval back in 2024, who also was I think has also fought. He fought Alexander Pantoja in a title bout, but lost. So 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and he has had 19 fights with 18 wins and one loss. So in the 18 wins, he has 6 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission, and 4 wins by decision. And in the one loss, he shows that he's durable. Also shows that he's durable. Has never been knocked out, never been submitted, and has only lost one time by way of decision. And so this feels kind of like these are some younger fighters too, some young fighters here. Tatsuro Taira only 26, and Joshua Van, what he only 23, only 20, yeah, 24. So yeah, some young fighters here in these two guys, and definitely like guys that you would hope keep their like successful career and like prominent, and looks like it's got a lot of potential. Obviously, Joshua Van already has the belt, but if Tatsuro Taira was able to win this by win this and become the first Japanese belt, that would definitely be a great thing to add to your record and your history as your career. But anyway, so with the flyweight bout between Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira, like I want to pick Tatsuro Taira to win this bout by submission, but just seeing how Joshua Van, it's been so long, it's been 5 years since he's ever been submitted. Feels hard to pick that, and almost feels hard for me to even pick Tatsuro Taira to win this, just because it's a championship and a Japanese fighter has never won the title before. And where did he come over? He's been fighting in the UFC since back in 2022, so he's not one of those guys that just came over from like Ryzen, like Japan, and was given a title shot right away. That happened a couple cards back to where, and then you had some of these older, like predominant fighters from coming over from Bellator who, are looked at as like some world pound for pound fighters, as some of the greatest current fighters out there. But because they're already 35 plus and have never fought in the UFC, just don't have the same success. But that's not Tatsuro Taira's story. He's been fighting in the UFC since 2022 and has only had one loss, which was Brandon Royval, who we've talked about as being a former title contender. So in this bout between the flyweight championship bout between Joshua Van, the champion, versus Tatsuro Taira, the challenger, I'm going with Tatsuro Taira, and I think he's going to knock Joshua Van out, and that's going to probably, I don't think there'll be like a rematch between Joshua Van and Alexander Pantoja. I think that'll end up leading to Tatsuro Taira facing Alexander Pantoja. So we might be a while until we get the rematch between Joshua Van and Alexander Pantoja. So, and I have Tatsuro Taira. Like I said, I would like to pick him to get the submission, but fighting history doesn't really show that. But so I'm going to go with him to knock Joshua Van out. All right, we've made it. We finally made it to the main event of UFC 328, Chimaev versus Strickland. And that's Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. And this fight, man, talk about a lot of animosity and and bad blood between these guys. The whole story, you kind of hear like, oh, they used to be training partners and they were kind of buddies, and then once they started finding more success, they kind of fell out of that and kind of started to realize like they're completely different people. But man, some of the stuff that they said to each other during the fight press conference, the pre-fight press conferences, like, yeesh, got me kind of clenching your teeth with some of the stuff they say, like talking about Sean Strickland's former child abuse, where his father abused him, and then you got Sean Strickland calling. He's from a Russian country and from that area, and calling him like a goat fucker, and then homophobic slurs and things like that. Oh, I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna kill you type of things. And man, that was wild. And I don't think it's all like real, but I think it's to some extent it's good for the sport. It draws viewers to it. People want to see what happens. People want to see guys fight that actually dislike each other. And I think it's what the kind of stuff they're putting out there is real enough to believe in regards to that. Yeah, they don't like each other, but I don't know if they hate each other to the point where they'll like kill each other. Like, because like during the press conferences, hell, they had like armed police officers and armed security between them, and like keeping them back from each other. But yeah, that was wild. Just the press conference alone was enough excitement for me. Hell, I'd have maybe paid a pay-per-view for that, because we hadn't really seen any type of press conferences with that type of animosity since like Colby Covington or Conor McGregor or Daniel Cormier and John Jones. It's been a while since you've had that. But Khamzat Chimaev, middleweight champion, looking to defend the belt. It sounds, from what I'm hearing and how it looked like, he had a poor weight cut. That was another heart attack leading up to this card, and kind of the exact reason why I have to wait till like Friday afternoon before I can do these podcasts, because you're never really sure if the card is gonna hold up, is gonna stay together, and that's pretty commonplace with Khamzat Chimaev. He's lost weight, he's pulled out of fights, or he's missed weight, he's pulled out of fights due to injury, and he only had like 10-15 minutes before his like final official weigh-in was in this morning weigh-in show that they had. And I'm not really sure how much time he would have maybe would have had after if he would have missed weight. But luckily he was able to come in and make weight at 185 if he actually made weight. I think we're trying to keep the product like it is, and it may be a little bit of susness in regards to if he actually made weight. But just seeing how dejected he was, barely able to get his gym pants, his sweatpants off, and then he was hardly able to get them back on. I was worried that he was not going to be able to, like he was going to fall over while he was trying to get his sweatpants back on. But yeah, we hear that this might be his final fight at 185, and then he's moving up again to 205. So it would have been not that surprising if he didn't make weight. And he is 15. He is 15-0, and so obviously on a 5-fight winning streak, and over guys that have either held the belt or have fought for the belt. I guess besides maybe Kevin Holland, but you had Gilbert Burns, decision victory Kevin Holland, submission Barbaro choke Kamaru Usman, decision majority Robert Whitaker, where he like broke his face, like broke his like dental, had messed up his dental work, like his teeth, and had his teeth and stuff going through his lips. Made him tap like one of the fastest taps that I've seen in the UFC. And Robert Whitaker, like he knew it wasn't just a submission, like he knew that he just got hurt and injured with that dominant. And then Dracus du Plessis, pretty dominant victory against him. I think he took him down like 8 times in that fight, and that was the first time uh, Kamaru Usman, or that's the first time Khamzat Chimaev has gone 5 rounds, and that's when he beat, and that's when he won the belt. And so he's had so Khamzat Chimaev's had 15 matches with 15 uh, he's had 15 fights with 15 wins and 0 losses. So he's undefeated, and he's had in those 15 wins, he's had 6 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission, and 3 wins by decision. So it shows that he can win any way, in any type of way. Can win by knockout, can win by submission, and probably not the most preferred way for him to win is going the distance, because we've seen that he does seem to slow down a little bit in those fights against even Dracus du Plessis, where he won the title, or in the majority decision win over Kamaru Usman, and even I guess the win over Gilbert Burns. Those fights that went the decision, seems like he slows down a little bit, but not enough for him to lose or get knocked out or get caught in any type of submission himself. But the main thing that concerns me is just how like I said, we saw a fighter not too long ago fall over, like face plant, after they weighed in. So that's not that seemed like he was pretty not far off from that. On top of the fact he took like pretty much every minute he had before he had to come and weigh in. So this is so he's fighting. So he's the challenger is Sean Strickland, and we can't really say MMA math. It doesn't always equal. It doesn't always calculate how we think it is. But this is how I'm kind of looking at it. This is kind of leading into my pick. Besides what's kind of dictating it a little bit, just with how bad Khamzat Chimaev looked at the weigh-ins, even though he's looked like that before and he's missed weight before, and still is 15-0. But the thing that has me a little concerned here and would make it hard for me to pick Sean Strickland to win this fight is that his 2 losses to Dracus du Plessis, that's who Khamzat Chimaev beat to win the fight, to win the title. And so Sean Strickland, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, and the 2 losses were originally lost his belt to Dracus du Plessis, and then had a split decision win over Paul Acosta, and then had a rematch to Dracus du Plessis and lost to him again by decision. But it was I would say the second fight obviously was a more impressive, more dominant performance by Dracus du Plessis over Sean Strickland, because it wasn't a split decision. But man, I think people might be taking the win over Anthony Hernandez fluffy a little bit, as if Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is on Khamzat Chimaev's level. I think people are taking too much stock into that win, and kind of just forgetting that Sean Strickland has lost to Dracus du Plessis, the former champion, before Khamzat Chimaev came along. So he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, and he is on that 1 fight winning streak against Anthony Hernandez, where he did a good job of stuffing and preventing takedowns against Anthony Hernandez. So maybe kind of got a striker versus grappler in his last 5 fights, but I don't think is in the same league as Khamzat Chimaev. And like I said, the only thing that's kind of making this harder pick kind of for me is just that Khamzat Chimaev didn't look great at the weigh-ins. But Sean Strickland has had 37 fights in his career with 30 wins and seven losses. In his 30 wins, he's had 12 wins by knockout, 4 wins by decision, and 4 wins by submission, and 14 wins by decision. And then in his 7 losses, he's lost 2 times by knockout, never been submitted, and then 5 wins by decision. And so we know that MMA math usually doesn't calculate, usually doesn't add up, but I'm going with it anyways, and I'm guessing I'm just disregarding how bad Khamzat Chimaev looked at weigh-ins. We'll just say that he's dealt with that before, and he's able to rehydrate well. But in this middleweight bout between Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland, I'm going with Khamzat Chimaev to defend his belt, and I think he's going to be the first fighter to submit Sean Strickland. So not necessarily saying he's going to blow through Sean Strickland and submit him in like the first round or in the first minute of the first round or anything like that. But I think he's just going to be able to dominate Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland had a hard time uh, defending the takedowns against Dracus du Plessis, even though early on in those fights he was able to get back up, but he was just continued to get taken down. And I feel as if Khamzat Chimaev has a better even better ground game that Sean Strickland had to defend and deal with than Dracus du Plessis. So I'm going with in the middleweight bout between Khamzat Chimaev, the champion, versus Sean Strickland, the challenger. I'm going with Khamzat Chimaev, and I think he's going to submit Sean Strickland, the first and only to do it. So that's UFC 328. So that's UFC 328. Chimaev versus Strickland, Khamzat Chimaev versus Strickland, and this should be a good card. And I think we mentioned early on just the fact that there's two titles, not interim titles, not vacant titles, not BMF titles, real titles and real champions defending their belt on this card. So I'm excited for this. I think this is going to be good, and hopefully there's no brawl or craziness, or maybe hopefully there is some crazy brawl and madness that happens in the ring after the main event. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think they said they're expected to have double the security than usual. I think that was obvious that they had that at the presser the other day. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?